The clearing didn't exist on any of the maps. Marcus had checked 3 different apps and an old printed topographic map he carried like a lucky charm. According to everything we had, the forest in that direction was supposed to be dense and unbroken. But sometime in the late afternoon, after hours of walking without a trail, the trees simply opened. The clearing sat in a shallow dip surrounded by tall pines. Their trunks rose like dark pillars, the canopy above so thick it swallowed most of the sky. Only a thin smear of pale light filtered through the branches. Lena stopped first. She lifted her camera slowly, turning in a slow circle. "Perfect," she whispered. Marcus grinned. Getting lost was the whole point of this trip for him. Back in the city, he spent his days coding in a windowless office, staring at screens until his eyes burned. Out here, he could pretend none of that existed. I had come for the quiet. And Lena came to capture places before people ruined them. We dropped our packs near the center of the clearing. The ground was soft with pine needles and dark soil. No rocks, no fallen branches. It felt strangely smooth, like the forest had swept it clean. Marcus stretched his arms. "No trail, no campsite markers, no noise," he said. "Exactly what I wanted." Lena lowered her camera and frowned slightly. "It's too quiet." She was right. No insects buzzed. No birds moved in the branches above us. Even the wind seemed to avoid the clearing. Just silence. We started setting up camp before the light faded completely. Marcus gathered wood while I cleared a shallow fire pit. Lena wandered the edge of the clearing, taking slow photographs of the trees and the fading light. By the time darkness settled in, the fire was burning low and steady. Orange light flickered across the trunks around us, stretching our shadows long across the ground. Marcus leaned back on his elbows. "Worth the hike," he said. Lena sat cross-legged near the fire, reviewing photos on her camera screen. "Something about this place feels..." She paused, searching for the word. "Empty." I poked the fire with a stick. "Or full," Marcus said. We sat there quietly for a while. The forest beyond the firelight remained perfectly still. Eventually Lena stood and walked over to her backpack. "I'm grabbing my recorder," she said. "This silence is weird. I want to capture it." She crouched beside her pack and unzipped the top compartment. The sound of the zipper seemed unnaturally loud in the clearing. Then she stopped. "What?" Her voice had changed. Marcus sat up. "What is it?" Lena didn't answer immediately. She reached inside the pack and slowly pulled something out. A photograph. The firelight flickered across the glossy surface. It showed 3 people standing beside a tent in a forest clearing. None of them were us. Lena turned the photo over. There was a name written on the back in faded ink. "Daniel." Marcus frowned. "Did you pick that up somewhere?" "No." She dug deeper into the pack. Another photo, then another. Each one showed different people standing in forests beside campfires in places that looked strangely similar to where we were now. Marcus stood and walked over. "Okay, that's weird." Lena turned the pack upside down and shook it. Several more photographs slid onto the ground, along with a small rusted compass, a folding knife, and a laminated map. Marcus picked up the map. Where did this come from? The paper looked old and brittle. The forest drawn on it didn't match any map we had. But one spot was circled in dark ink. Marcus slowly lifted his flashlight and aimed it around the clearing. Then back at the map. His smile disappeared. "That circle." Lena looked up. "What about it?" Marcus swallowed. "It's right here." The fire popped softly. For a moment none of us spoke. I shifted uneasily and reached for my own backpack. "Maybe someone left stuff here before," I said. "Maybe we grabbed the wrong packs when we stopped earlier." But even as I said it, I knew it didn't make sense. We hadn't seen another person all day. Still, I unzipped my pack. The zipper echoed through the silent clearing. Inside, the contents looked wrong. My sleeping bag was still there. My stove. But underneath them sat a small metal box I had never seen before. I pulled it out slowly. It was old. the kind of lockbox people use to store keepsakes. Inside were several folded papers. I opened one. It was a driver's license. Not mine. The photo showed a man with a beard and tired eyes. The name read, Andrew Holt. I checked the expiration date. 6 years ago. Marcus watched quietly. Okay, he said slowly. Now check the rest. Inside the box were more things. A wristwatch, a hotel keycard, and another photograph. This one made my stomach tighten. It showed the same clearing we were sitting in, the same ring of trees. But in the center stood a tent and 3 backpacks. And 3 people. The man from the license, a woman I didn't recognize, and someone else standing with their back to the camera. Marcus ran a hand over his face. Check yours. He opened his own pack and began pulling things out. First it looked normal. Then he froze. What? He held something up. A worn leather notebook. Inside were pages filled with handwritten notes. Dates. Coordinates. Descriptions of campsites deep in forests. Each entry ended the same way. Stayed the night. Packs heavier in the morning. Marcus flipped further through the pages. The final entry was written shakily. Found the clearing again. He looked up slowly. Again. The firelight flickered across Lena's face. She was staring at something in her hands. Another photograph. This one was taken tonight. Marcus blinked. What? She turned it toward us. The photo showed 3 people sitting beside a fire in a forest clearing. The angle looked like it had been taken from the trees. The figures were us. Marcus stood immediately. Okay, that's not funny. The forest remained silent. Lena whispered, Look at the background. Behind us in the photo, just beyond the firelight, something stood between the trees. A shape, tall, almost human. Watching. Marcus turned his flashlight toward the dark woods. The beam cut between the trunks. Nothing moved, but something about the silence had changed. The air felt heavier. I suddenly became aware of the weight of my backpack sitting beside me. Heavier than it should have been. Marcus slowly zipped his pack shut. The sound seemed to ripple outward into the trees. Then, from somewhere beyond the clearing, another zipper answered. Soft, slow, like someone else opening a pack in the dark. Lena's voice barely rose above a whisper. Listen. The forest was still silent. Except now we could hear something else. Footsteps moving slowly through the trees, circling the clearing, and the sound of someone searching through a backpack, just out of sight. We found the clearing late in the afternoon, hours past any trailhead or sign of a marked path. Marcus had insisted on following the river upstream, convinced it would lead us to something real, an unspoiled part of the forest where no one ventured. Lena had been reluctant at first, but the way the trees arched over us, their trunks straight and ancient, had calmed her. She kept muttering that the forest had a look like it hadn't seen a human in centuries. I followed mostly for the quiet. My city life was constant noise, fluorescent lights, and the hum of air conditioners. Out here, the air smelled of pine and damp soil, and even though the sun was low, the forest felt suspended in a half-light that softened the edges of the world. We dropped our packs in the center of a shallow bowl surrounded by towering pines. The ground was surprisingly flat, covered in a thick layer of needles and moss. There were no rocks, no fallen branches, just a soft, almost spongy carpet that muted our footsteps. Marcus immediately began gathering firewood. Perfect, he said, tossing small logs onto a growing pile. Lena wandered the perimeter of the clearing, snapping photographs of trunks and shadows, occasionally crouching to examine roots that snaked over the soil like veins. I set up the tent while Marcus and Lena prepared the fire. The fabric felt thin under my fingers, flexible but stubborn. Even as I hammered the stakes into the soft soil, I noticed that the forest was unnaturally quiet. Not the quiet of early evening, when insects slow and birds stop calling. This was a heavy, expectant quiet, like the forest itself was holding its breath. By the time darkness fell, our fire burned steady in the center of the clearing. Flames licked upward, casting long, flickering shadows. The outer edges of the clearing dissolved into darkness, the trees merging into one solid black wall. Lena crouched near the fire, camera in hand, recording faint sounds. The subtle crackle of wood, the soft rustle of needles, and nothing else. Marcus stretched beside her. This is exactly what I needed. No city, no people, just... He paused, listening. Nothing. I zipped the tent shut behind me and crawled inside. The thin nylon smelled faintly of new fabric and pine sap. It was warmer inside than out, but there was a chill I couldn't shake, a dampness that made the corners of the tent sag. I shrugged it off, assuming it was the ground cooling beneath us. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was condensation. A faint wet smear above my head, glistening in the flashlight's beam as I dug through my backpack. My fingers brushed the tent ceiling, and it felt damp, slightly colder than the surrounding fabric. I froze. "Marcus," I called softly, unsure if I'd spoken aloud. "Yeah." His voice carried from the fire outside. "Nothing. Just check this." I pointed at the nylon above me. He shuffled over, ducking into the tent. Marcus traced the wet spot with his fingertips. "Just do? Or your water bottle leaked?" I shook my head. "I didn't bring water inside, and it feels cold. Really cold." He shrugged, brushing it away with a finger. "Tent fabric gets weird at night." But as we lay there, settling in for sleep, I couldn't stop glancing up. The spot seemed to stretch slightly, darkening against the pale green of the nylon. When I reached up, it was unmistakably there, a handprint. At first, it looked like a child's, small and faint. But the fingers were too long, the angles wrong. The middle finger seemed to bend at an unnatural joint, and the palm was wider than a human hand should be. I drew back my fingers. The nylon was cold and slightly damp under my touch. My heartbeat spiked. "Lena," I whispered. She crawled in beside us, peering upward. "That's weird," she said softly. Her breath condensed slightly in the tent air. "I mean, it's just a handprint, but..." Marcus had gone pale. "I swear," he muttered. "We are the only ones here. Only us. Nobody else came in." We sat quietly, the firelight flickering across the tent walls, casting shadows that danced over the nylon. Every sound outside, branches snapping, leaves rustling, seemed amplified. But mostly there was nothing. Hours passed. The handprint didn't fade. If anything, it grew more distinct, the cold spreading outward in faint veins like frost on a windowpane. I tried to reason it away. Maybe it was some condensation pattern caused by the ground beneath the tent. Maybe it was an old stain from a previous hiker. But none of it fit. The shape, the size, the unnatural bend of the fingers, it was deliberate. And then I noticed another detail. Tiny depressions pressed into the soft nylon at the wrist, as if the hand had rested there, weightless but intent. "Do you think it's attached to something?" Lena whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't want to. We eventually drifted toward an uneasy sleep, each of us pretending the handprint was just a quirk of the tent. But the chill remained. It seeped into our limbs, crawling along the spine, settling deep into the joints. Hours later, I woke to the faintest sound, a soft, scraping noise above my head. The handprint had shifted. Not far, not drastically. Just enough that the fingers now seemed to curl downward, as if pointing. My chest tightened. I reached up. The nylon was impossibly cold, almost icy and damp, sticking to my skin like a thin film of frost. I whispered, "Marcus, Lena, wake up." They stirred groggily. Marcus swore under his breath. Lena shone her flashlight upward. The beam caught the handprint, revealing details we hadn't noticed before. The skin seemed textured, ridged, almost like bark or old leather. And in the center of the palm, a faint indentation. A symbol. None of us recognized it, but it was deliberate, precise, old. The sound outside had grown. Soft, wet, scraping steps moving around the tent's perimeter. Branches bent unnaturally, though the trees were too thick to yield that easily. Lena's voice trembled. Do you think it's watching? Marcus swallowed hard. We shouldn't have come here. We huddled together, listening. The fire had died down outside, leaving the clearing in complete darkness. The tent fabric trembled faintly, as though breathing. The handprint seemed to shimmer slightly in the flashlight's beam. I reached out one more time. The moment my fingers touched it, the chill spread instantly up my arm, deep into my chest. A shiver passed through all three of us. Then I noticed the subtle detail that made my stomach drop. The fingers were no longer all pointing downward. Two of them now stretched toward the edges of the tent, as though trying to reach out. And the wrist area, slightly thicker than a human wrist, was pressed flat against the ceiling. And above it, faintly, the nylon sagged in the shape of a head. Not fully formed, just a suggestion, as if someone had pressed the top of their skull against the fabric and then stepped back. Lena's flashlight flickered and went out. In the darkness, I felt it weightless, impossible, and deliberate. The hand wasn't alone. It had left a message. A cold, wet letter pressed into the nylon above us. I traced it with my fingertips. It spelled a single word. Leave. The wind didn't move. The trees didn't sway. The forest waited. We didn't speak. We didn't move. By the time morning light leaked into the clearing, the handprint had vanished. The nylon was dry, the cold gone, but the indentation remained faintly, like a memory pressed into the tent itself. We packed silently. Marcus avoided eye contact. Lena's camera stayed in its case. As we left the clearing, I glanced back once. Among the shadows of the trees, I thought I saw the outline of a figure, tall and thin, watching us. It didn't move. It didn't need to. The forest had remembered, and we were no longer welcome.